Perhaps you'll recall the JD Vance Jim Halpert stare that went viral during the debate with Tim Walz. This is the look that gave us the first JD Vance set of memes that went viral online, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. The memes have, of course, accelerated out of control and into abject hilarity, and I love all of them. I know that JD Vance loves all of them. JD Vance dressed as his own meme for Halloween, so way to go. All of us professionals can only dream of having the arc that JD Vance is having right now, as he's able to go from this look during the debate with Tim Walz to putting Tim Walz under investigation for being a criminal fraudster, for accelerating what JD Vance told me just a couple of weeks ago was certainly an operation with Democrat officials to help Somalis who just got here, right, figure out a way to defraud the system. JD Vance told us directly that this is something that he thinks is architected by the Democrats of the state. And we know this because, well, Ilhan Omar wrote the Meals Act. And please don't glaze over, like it's really not that hard to see how this all worked, how the fraud worked. Ilhan Omar writes the Meals Act during COVID to reduce down to zero all federal regulatory oversight of meals programs. Then immediately her fraudster friends Somalis start running fraudulent meals programs for a bunch of non-existent ghost children and charging the federal government millions of dollars. It's called the Feeding Our Future scam. So it's just one hand feeding the other. Who gives Ilhan Omar these ideas? Who tells the Somali fraudsters to take advantage of these loopholes? I mean, a lot of them don't speak English. They haven't been here that long. This is an operation. And of course, this is why Ilhan Omar is hiding money and laundering money in these fake businesses, because she's getting a cut, right? That's what's going on here. And JD Vance is calling it out and putting the governor of the state, Tim Walz, who without a doubt knew this was happening and benefited from it, under investigation. Let's hear it.
But regardless of whether there was criminal wrongdoing on behalf of the governor, of course, like I said, well, we're going to let the law make those determinations. We know that he turned a blind eye towards this. I mean, you have people, Will, who came into this country, many of them illegally, and 6 months later they're driving Mercedes despite the fact that they don't have a job. That doesn't happen without some defrauding of the American taxpayer. The fact that they turned a blind eye towards it for so long is a scandal. We're also going to find out whether it was criminal.
Let's stay on the note of accountability for one more second.
But regardless of...
So here we go. JD Vance has confirmed they are actively investigating Tim Walz' criminal investigation, the massive fraud in Minnesota. This was on an interview with Will Cain on Fox News. Will there be accountability for Tim Walz and Keith Ellison for the fraud that occurred under their watch? Again, it is critical to know that these guys, I mean, what I hate to go back to Seinfeld. This is literally my favorite show that I will have for the rest of my life. So if you're watching this channel, expect some Seinfeld references. You know, like, my George ain't smart enough to hatch an operation like this. I'm paraphrasing George Costanza's father, saying that his kid's just too dumb to come up with some type of fraudulent scheme in one of the Seinfeld episodes. And so are these Somalis. The Somalis there's a system that somebody has to teach them about fake daycares, fake child services, fake hospice. This entire ecosystem of fraudulence off the backs of the American taxpayer, somebody has to roadmap that for them. And it needs to be obviously somebody who has the power of the purse and of the government and understands these things. Keith Ellison is a communist. Tim Walz is a communist. And boy, it'd be nice to see.
You mentioned complicity, and you analogized the governor to an arsonist. Do you expect some type of accountability, beyond political, some type of accountability for Attorney General Ellison or Governor Walz?
Well, we have to follow the law where it leads. And what we know is that there were multiple Minnesota authorities who were turning a blind eye.
Okay. So that clip includes the actual question. So JD Vance flames Tim Walz for taking credits of the Somali raids. So there were also, for all those who say nothing ever happened, Somali raids
Tim Walz of
this
Minnesota
week
has claimed some credit for the fraud crackdown in Minnesota. Is there credit to be deserved for the governor?
No, not at all, Will. This is like the arsonist trying to claim credit for the work of the fire department, because Tim Walz let this fraud happen under his watch. Whether he was complicit in it directly himself or just turned a blind eye towards it, we really did not get much help at all from the governor's office. Where we did actually get some help was from some state, local law enforcement officers who we assigned to the federal task force because the state government wasn't doing anything. So all credit goes to people on the ground, the federal officers, the state officers who are working to uncover this fraud. The best part about this for me, Will, is you have, when the president empowered his entire government to go after this fraud issue, I had this question to the Department of Justice. These investigations take a long time. So I was asking myself, how quickly can we start getting into some real investigatory work, court-issued warrants, actually going door to door and finding out what's going on? People told me it would take at least 6 months. We've gone from Nick Shirley's video about the Minneapolis fraud schemes to active, judges issuing warrants for this investigation in a matter of 3 months. We've got 280 law enforcement officers working on this problem. We really have the most accelerated, aggressive anti-fraud operation that we've ever seen from the federal government. And again, it's because the President of the United States empowered his team to go after this.
I saw it, man. I was there at their first little fraud meeting at the White House. This is where we interviewed JD Vance and asked him about this. Vance blasts Tim Walz for taking credit for turning a blind eye to scammers. And I would argue, without question, actually, clearly supporting the scammer. They have to. This is how it works in California. This is how it works in these blue states. They're the ones that are getting the benefit from the scams because they're the ones getting the Democrat votes. So please put him under investigation as quickly as possible. Tim Walz should resign over the fraud, says JD Vance previously at the White House. And JD Vance previously told us that this is something that is going to potentially lead to higher powers. It's not just the low-level Somali thugs and criminal aliens and migrants that are guilty of this. It is actually the higher-ups that architect all of this for them. Journalism that creates real-world change, boom. For months, the mainstream media and political tried to debunk the fraud scandal in Minnesota. Guess what? It's all true. Exposed them all, says Nick Shirley, who deserves, of course, the lion's share of the credit for blowing the lid off of this story, the power of independent media. Thank you for supporting us. Here's that question to JD Vance, ladies and gentlemen, about the fraud in Minnesota. Doing our part. See you. Well, what people need to see, I think that the fraud has been laid bare. We've all seen the Leering Center, right?
Correct.
The Leering Center is not an actual daycare.
No.
The Leering Center was fraud, right? And we've seen the hospice fraud in California. And so I think it's been demonstrated that this is a problem. What people need to see now is arrests, right?
100%.
Deportations. They need to see that the federal government, the gears of justice grind against these people and they're not allowed to just continue.
Yes. So let me give you an example, something I just talked about upstairs, but I think it's worth reiterating for your viewers. So you take a program that exists within Medicaid to help autistic children get the resources that they need. So you have a Somalian fraudster in suburban Minneapolis who says that they have 3 kids who are autistic, and maybe they don't even have 3 kids, and they certainly don't have 3 kids who are autistic. So it takes money away from the American citizens who need these services. It defrauds the taxpayer. And you're absolutely right that the thing that we need to do is get real justice. So, something I learned just the past couple of months, I had no idea that we do not prosecute fraud in this country if it's under $1.5 million per year. Okay? So think about that. Think of all the people who are $1.5 million a year. This is not chump change. That is meaningful money. And by the way, sometimes by prosecuting the lower level people, you get to the higher level people who are collecting, who have sort of the conspiracy to commit fraud against the American people. So one of the things that we're trying to do with this task force is commit the Department of Justice to investigating all fraud and actually going after the people who are doing it at the small scale of $1.4 million, but also actually looking at the big conspiracies that are out there. Because, Benny, I don't know about you, but I do not believe that what happened with the Somalian immigrant community in Minnesota, I don't think that happens without some cooperation from politicians, without other people looking the either way, or maybe even being in the fraud themselves.